All right, man. This is episode number 48 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, and it is cozy indeed, man. I tell you, I went to go record this about 20 some odd minutes ago when all of a sudden the power went out, man. It was totally cool. In that moment, I jumped from my book, got a couple pages of reading done, and before you know it, bam, power's right back on. So, any opportunity you can, don't be sitting around waiting for the power to get back on. Don't be being like, oh man, I wish I was on my computer right now, or I wish I was playing some video game. Utilize those pockets of time you got throughout the day when you're at your job or when you're out. If you're at if you're out in a restaurant or anything like that, and you have that moment waiting for your meal or anything like that, you go, oh, I got my book right here. I got my notebook. I'm gonna get some writing done. Because if you're a white man, then you're gonna be like, oh my god, I can't get anything done. It's like, man, if you got those pockets of time added up, you'd have so much done. What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? Oh man, what a week it's been, man. I think hopefully this has been the last amount of snow we're gonna get. I love the snow out there, but it came as a surprise yesterday, man, when I was leaving my house at around 5:30 or so, and oh man, snow was coming down hard. It was freezing rain, and you got it when you're out. I mean, the thing is, man, when you wake up, you want to wake up at a reasonable time so your body it doesn't have to adjust too much. It's ready to go. Whether you have your coffee with you or you want some water, which is important in the morning, man. 'Cause if you wake up, make sure the first thing you do, you get yourself a glass of water because your body's dehydrated, and you know that feeling when you're dehydrated and you just feel so weak and without energy, man. So I know it's quick to go for that, cup of Joe, but the glass H2O gets you on your way, man. Boy, when you're up that early, man, it's like you got hyper focused on the road. You got to make sure that you're not going to be going too fast. You're not going to be going around any sharp corners, man. Make sure you're not tailgating anybody. If somebody is tailgating you, make sure you just pull over and let them do their thing, man. It's totally wild, but it's totally picturesque. By the time the sun comes out and you just see the open plains of white, it's just totally beautiful, man. This is truly one of my favorite times of the year. Just all of winter. It's so cozy, man. The other night I got the films I needed to watched for that night, and I had some time, so I got into bed, and it was totally silent in the house. I had my book under the covers, and the only sound there was the cat purring at the end of the bed, completely entrenched in slumber, man. And in that moment, it was just a total feeling of relaxation and personal nirvana that can't be put into words, man. You kind of just have to experience it yourself, much in the same way I was talking about last week, where you go into a bookstore like that you discover, and you're just like, man, it's almost like an out of body experience. It's totally wild. It's something that has to be experienced for yourself if given the opportunity. Which if you live in an area of the world where you get these beautiful, wintry landscapes, then do yourself a favor and don't waste these moments. Get off your phone, get off social media, get rid of all that nonsense, man. It's just gonna rot your brain, man. Just enjoy the moments while you still got them, man. One thing I wanted to bring up at the beginning of the show, which it just premiered this week, is I've talked a couple times about the new Jerzy Skolimoski film EO, a film that was one of my favorites of 2022. And if you didn't get the opportunity to see it theatrically, and you now do, you now have the opportunity to see it, I should say. It's on the Criterion channel now. I imagine that it'll probably get a Criterion Blu-ray this year. A 4K would be nice, but if you have the Criterion channel or you know somebody who has it, or if they have a free trial and you're interested in watching it, definitely take the opportunity to do so. With that being there, I'll have to definitely make a point to watch Alcazar Balthazar at some point. Skolimowski's kind of version of that film, from what I've heard, not necessarily a remake, but a similar kind of film that was direct inspiration for EO. And there had been a time a little while ago where the Criterion Channel had a handful of Skolimowski's films on there, and unfortunately I didn't get to them by the time they were on there. When I went to go watch The Shout, I had to go watch it elsewhere, but I had a handful of his films, man, and he's a filmmaker who I've only seen three of his films, and each of them I've really enjoyed in different ways, and I find him to be a very interesting filmmaker, going into these dark, kind of almost surreal subjects, or surreal feelings, I should say. Because the interesting thing is that less so. Let me get a sip of coffee right here, man, because it is the morning after all. I've had my water, so now it's coffee time. Actually, no, wait, I haven't had my water yet. Oh man, I'm contradicting myself. Jeez Louise, man. Anyways, but what's interesting about the three films of his that I've seen. Hold on just a second. Good God, man, the amount of interruptions in the past 10 minutes have been something else. So, geez Louise, I do apologize. If you're listening to this, it's only been a second, but it's been 10 minutes here. So, I was talking about Jerzy Skolimoski, and what's interesting with his three films that I had seen, The Shout, Deep End, and EO, is that all three of them have a surreal quality. The Shout, in a lot of ways, reminded me of something like a Peter Weir film, something close to The Last Wave at times. Maybe not as surreal as a film like that, but it has that sense of almost kind of creeping up on you, much in the same way that Deep End does, where Deep End has a whole subplot of something the main character in that film seeing this cardboard cutout that reminds him or could possibly be this woman that he's going after, and he starts to kind of gain this human like relationship feeling, I should say, with this cardboard cutout even to the end of the film. And EO as well, having those kind of moments of the camera turning red. I used a shot for it on one of the recent Cozy Corners of just these beautiful, what are those called? Like windmill sort of contraptions. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but having these just stark red, open, like just skylines with the donkey as a small part of it. It's real cool, man. I can't say as much for his other work, but if you have the opportunity to come across his work, then you're going to be doing yourself a favor in watching those. But EO is now available on the Criterion channel. So, following up from last week, I wanted to mention I was going to talk about briefly. I had mentioned that I had seen the recent Oscar-nominated short films and how I was ultimately underwhelmed by the lot of them. But how earlier in 2022 I had seen 10 shorts from the yearly Manhattan Short Festival that was touring the country at that point. And so there were 10 shorts there from different parts of the world. And I would say I'd recommend about 8 of them. Only 2 I thought were not very good. But it's an interesting lot of films here, different kinds of films, different filming techniques, the way that they portray some closer to a straight linear narrative, others something more ethereal and something kind of spiritual in a way that I really did enjoy. So let me get these up here right now, and I want to mention a couple of these that should you come across are worth your time, absolutely. And I'm going to talk about 3 just briefly here, but a 4th that I definitely didn't want to overlook, but is a little more traditional in terms of its story and the way it plays out, but still worth your time, is one of the shorts, Free Fall, directed by Emmanuel Tenenbaum from France. And it's cool on the website. It actually lists the runtime on each because some of them are pretty noticeably, feels like longer than others. This one's about 20 minutes, about a man on September 11th who realizes a situation where he can take advantage of the, I believe it looks like the stock market. They're part of some stock market or some investment firm, and the way that all plays out with a gut punch of an ending. But I really enjoyed this one. I wanted to just give a brief mention of that one in terms of it's a very sleek directed film with a good lead performance there, good tension, and let's see here. All right, let's see. So the 3 ones I enjoyed the most that are worthy of your time, I'm going to be very brief with these because I got some other things I got to talk about in this episode, is The Treatment, directed by Alvaro Carmona from Spain. This one is 9 minutes about a couple who the husband wants to go to a place where they can restore his hair, but it has a side effect that leaves him kind of second guessing the situation. Something kind of not quite as grotesque as the segment in body bags with I believe it was Powers Booth in that segment of him getting that hair treatment. It's the one that evoked the biggest audience reaction. This is one that the audience was very into. I would say most of the jokes hit. When I say jokes, I don't necessarily mean set up punchline. It's more so in the delivery of a nonchalant response to something that is unorthodox and controversial. This was the one I believe. I think this won the festival, and rightful, and it's I don't know if any of them are more deserving than others. They're both, I would say 8, even 9, I would say. There's only one I would say I really didn't enjoy. But 9 of the 10, I would say, are all interesting in their own right. This one is I would say is probably the most low key of them all. It's really one location, only a couple actors, but it's the way that they bounce off each other, the line delivery, the reaction, not playing it up for the camera where it'd be so easy to make the premise of this very one note. He says something bizarre in a nonchalant way, and a character reacts, and the short does more than that. It's you see the breakdown of the main character on this, kind of discovering whether or realizing whether or not, at first the absurdity of the situation, but coming to terms with maybe it is something that I want to do. Really enjoyed this one. It's the one that, like I said, evoked the biggest reaction and made me laugh out loud a few times. Worth your time. Always worth your time. We got a sip of coffee here. The second from Finland is called The Blanket, directed by Teppo Eriksson. How do I say this name? Give me a second. Erikssonen. Sure, why not, man? Could not tell you. But it's called The Blanket. This one is almost about 15 minutes long. It takes place in, I completely forgot, 1939. And this one is mostly short. Mostly silent. They're all short. This one is mostly silent, and I don't know if this was shot on 16 millimeter or what, but this is a beautiful looking short. Probably the most beautiful looking out of all of them. These beautiful white open fields. We have this little girl who has to go get milk for her isolated mother and brother in Finland. There's no one else around, so it's this long trek that she has to go to. The ma can't go because has to stay with the baby, so they rely on this young girl. And I believe the young girl in this won the Best Actor award. I mean, it's all relative. It's all completely, there's plenty of great performances in all of these shorts. So to pick one is absurd, but I think more so, it's easy for. Oftentimes, it's easy to say that a performance is good when there's hardly any dialogue. It's primarily just body movements or the way they react, but not so much here, man. I mean, when I say that, it's easy to say that it'd be a shallow kind of it'd be a shallow appraisal, because when I look at the performance here in this one, it's not just the fact that she's going through these treacherous landscapes. It's the fact that when she actually does have to interact with other humans, other people in this short, even as brief as it may be, it's the way that we see the exhaustion on her, and we see that when she has to make the trek back, the weariness on her. It's a very interesting performance that goes beyond just being it'd be shallow to say that because it's primarily silent that it's good in that regard, and it's an easy cop out to do, but that's not the case here. The last one that I wanted to mention here from France, this is called The Big Green, directed by Lorenzo Massoni. And this is one that has a lot of tension to it as well. This woman who is going to part of this company who sees a lot of her equipment vandalized. People are saying, "Don't cut down these trees. We need them and all that." She goes up one of these trees, drops her phone, and realizes that she is stuck up there. There's not going to be anybody around, and she has no way of getting out of the situation. It's too far to drop. If she drops, I mean, God forbid you break your legs and there's no one around, So she does the complete opposite, and that is she attempts to go higher and higher to find another point of elevation to get to, to jump to maybe another tree or get to another point where she can get down. And this one, it was very spiritual. It's primarily just this one actor. And the way that what's interesting about this is that because, when it's dealing in a situation like this involving heights, I think a lot of filmmakers would probably rely on the fact of, as an audience, feeling the vertigo of being high up. And while this does do that to an extent, and that's not a detriment, but I should say that oftentimes it's very easy to rely on that and evoke a strong reaction out of that. But I think what's interesting about this is that really in the second half of the short, when it becomes past the frustration of being, stuck in the situation, you feel a bond between the woman and these trees, feeling the nature around her and really kind of coming to terms with her environment around her that she sees all the time, but not necessarily taking it in. The final shot of this I thought was really exceptional, which is it's obvious on one hand, but on the other hand, it works. Just because it's obvious doesn't mean it wouldn't be effective. And this, had just a beautiful pulled back shot at the end. And this was the last one that showed, and I thought was a strong one to end on. I don't know if where these shorts exactly are available, maybe on a place like Vimeo, or I see that Manhattan Short has collections of DVDs. So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to see, because there's even a couple more here that I really enjoyed, but I wanted to just mention those three. But it's worthy of your time, man. I know, I've been neglective with a lot of short films. It's not until the past couple years that I would say that I've been really diving more into a lot of short film collections, that I've been discovering a lot of stuff that I've been finding really impactful and been finding that have stuck with me. A lot of times I see a lot of contemporary films that that seem too long, and I mean, shorts can seem too long as well. That's a completely, obvious thing to point out. But it's a lot of these collections that I've been finding that have stuck with me more so than maybe even a lot of feature-length narrative films. Which brings me back to, I was online the other day on Orbit DVD's website looking at some of the titles they had for sale, and I went over to the BFI Blu-ray section that they had on there. And there was a lot of very cool titles that are being released and that have been released. So they had put out a lot of Blu-rays that had piqued my interest previously, and still do. And one of the collections that I saw that I was on like white on rice, man, was the Kenneth Anger collection from the BFI. And Orbit, unfortunately, didn't have it in stock, so I had to order it from Amazon. But man, it was just totally, like I said before, with discovering the work of Peter Sotos from Kenneth Anger's work, I was not even aware this was released, so of course I had to jump on it, man. And it made me realize, as I'm finishing up the book now, that I don't think I've actually seen any of his shorts. I thought I may have seen clips somewhere, but to sit down and watch them, I have not. So this includes Fireworks, Puce Moment, Rabbit's Moon, Zoo T Artifice, if I said that right, Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, Scorpio Rising, Custom Car Commandos, Invocation of My Demon Brother, Rabbit's Moon, and Lucifer Rising. So I'll be getting this in the mail soon, and cannot wait for this, man. Nice 3-disc set. This is definitely going to be on the list to watch soon as I finish up the book itself. Perfect timing here, man. Let's see, make sure I got my notes here. Want to mention up. Man, I finally got around to watching Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate, because I had read the Cimino book that I talked about quite some time ago, and I had that Criterion, the full director's cut, the full 3.5-hour director's cut. And, it's an interesting film, and it's one that as I'm watching, it's hard to distance yourself from the history of the film, knowing what would happen after the fact in terms of Michael Cimino's career, this sort of shift in independent filmmaking on a mainstream theatrical level. And it's a film that you see the money behind it, you see the open, vast sets, you see, and it does it totally work? I don't think so, man. I think that the script is very messy. There's a lot of these moments in the film that don't need to contribute to the plot of the story, I'm sorry, not of the story. It doesn't need to contribute to the plot of the film, but a lot of times, if there's a reason for it to be there in terms of building up any kind of character development or anything like that, then it's okay. But there's a lot of moments in this film that I felt did not warrant quite the time spent on it. It's not a bad film, though. That's the one thing I do want to mention is that watching this film with that context, it is worth watching for sure. It's one that I think should be seen, not necessarily for the quality of it, because I don't know about the quality, but there are some moments in this film that are truly exceptional. There's just some great photography, the beautiful landscapes of the mountain. There's one particular sequence early on where Christopher Walken's character, he shoots someone through a hung up white sheet, and what I really love is that the camera pokes through. He's holding the gun. Got these beautiful mountains behind him, and he's looking stern, man. He's looking menacing. And there's moments like that that are just really just kind of get to you, man. And early on, I'm reminded of what felt like when people, a lot, I hear criticism of, oftentimes with the Deer Hunter, of the wedding sequence in that film. I don't know how long that sequence goes on for, but I find it completely riveting, man. From the beginning of it all to the point where they're running down the streets, just completely mad and drunk. I think that's one of the greatest sequences of that era. But here it feels like it tries to do something similar, and there's a sequence early on at, I believe it was a graduation. I forgot what exactly was. Keep in mind, it's been a couple weeks since I've seen this film, so I do apologize that my memory being a little fuzzy on some of these aspects. But it's a long sequence that felt like it was trying to harken back to that in a way, in terms of just your first real introduction to these characters. Because in the Deer Hunter, that whole wedding sequence happens fairly early on, and we know the characters at that point. They're blue collar workers. They like to hang out, get drunk at the local pub, and all that. Listen to Frankie Valli. I mean, who doesn't? But when you get to that point and just seeing these kinds of characters, how quickly the mood can shift. We have that moment in the Deer Hunter where there's a fight almost breaks out, like a real heavy one, and then just like that they're back, and you just see they're intense and but they're having a good time as well. It's interesting, man. I'm not familiar with Cimino's work past Heaven's Gate. The book mentions that a lot of the other films that he made, it's more brief on a lot of those films, but he did. Afterwards, he did Year of the Dragon, The Sicilian, Desperate Hours, and his final feature was The Sun Chaser. And I believe The Sicilian was based off a Mario Puzo novel. Yes, that's right. I've not seen this one. But after reading that Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli book, I've become more aware and more interested in Mario Puzo's work. A very interesting writer. I'd love to read some of his fiction novels at some point, even the ones he did before The Godfather as well. I should say especially because of just what how he worked on them, the way the book describes them. He makes these early novels that he's passionate about, but he's taking his time with. He's really, he's very slow, very methodical with what he writes, and then when they don't hit, he makes The Godfather that he disregards as something that his heart wasn't totally into. He took the advance of it early on, that he was paid for the book, and really kind of went through it before he even finished the book, and then it releases, and that becomes his biggest success. But it's interesting to see what he was more passionate about previously with this previous. I think it was 2 books he wrote before The Godfather, man. And I'm not really sure about the books he wrote since that. Besides The Sicilian, of course. But interesting stuff there, man. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but if you get the opportunity to see Heaven's Gate, I'm not really sure what the reevaluated critical response is, but it's a very interesting film, and I think should be seen even outside of just the historical context as its own film. It's got a lot of ideas there. I don't know if they fully work for it, and I think that it's one that, on one viewing, because you're taking in so much, that it may not be able it doesn't fully process for me in terms of immediate feelings with it. It's been a couple weeks since I've seen it, and I'm still not exactly sure how I feel about it, other than it being just an interesting view from an artist. that got out of control. I mean, but it's a great cast behind it. I mean, let me just read out some of these names here. You got Chris Christopherson, Christopher Walken, John Hurt, Sam Waterston, Brad Dourif, Isabel Huberts, Joseph Cotton, man, geez Louise, Richard Macer, Jeff Bridges, Jeffrey Lewis, Terry O'Quinn. I don't remember Terry O'Quinn in the film. Man, so check it out, man. You know, as well as I believe Sound Running actually just I think I got announced for a 4K. Or maybe it already came out. I can't even remember. But the Michael Cimino written film, Bruce Stern from, gosh, what year is that? 72, I think. I don't exactly remember. But worth your time as well. Sound Running, very cool film. But I gotta be aware of the time on this. Make sure I'm not gonna get to that. All right, I'll have to save some of that for next week. But all right, guys, well, you got the weekend ahead of you. Make sure you're using your time wisely. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water, eating right. You know, maybe you're eating right and then you pass by a fast food place one of these days and you're just like, you know what, I want to indulge myself on this. Hey, man, you go for it. You live your life the way you want to. Make sure you're working on what you need to work on. Taking plenty of art, taking some outside weather if you can. If it's not too cold for you, you know, make sure you're getting out and doing something with your life, man. Or staying and doing something with your life. Whatever you want to do. You're the master of your own ship, man. So go ahead and do it. All right, guys, you take care.